Hey friends, Mike and Jess here.
And welcome to Regeneration Nation TV. Today we are reacting to a video called 10 Ways Brits and Americans Use Numbers Very Differently from Lost in the Pond.
I'm excited. First time we've seen a video from this channel. I assume, Jess even mentioned it, I assume that like Fahrenheit, Celsius will be on this in this video. But other than that, I really don't know. I'm interested to see all of the different ways.
Yeah, definitely.
That,
I don't know.
we use numbers. So yeah, we've got the links for this channel down below, links for this original video. Go check them out. Go show them some love. And yeah, let's get into this.
Let's do it.
Oh, hello, don't mind me, just using the calculator on my phone, which I keep in my pocket just to stick it to my year 10 maths teacher who told me that I'd never have such luxury. And speaking of maths, remember a few videos ago when I said this? A question that I get all the time is why do British people say maths instead of math? Well, when it comes to Britain and America, this is by no means the only difference that involves numbers. In fact, since I moved to the United States, my daily life has become filled with numeric anomalies with which my brain may never come to terms. Now, before I get into that, I do want to point out that this video will not be examining our two countries' different measuring systems, because I also did that in a previous video. And while we're on the subject of numbers, if you want to propel this channel to 1 million subscribers, and you haven't yet become one yourself, do that now!
I like him.
In the meantime, here are 10.
You know, I just realized, like, we never ask people to subscribe. We throw up the little banner down at the bottom, but I'm so bad about that.
Yeah.
We've been on YouTube doing this, like, actually full-time, pushing videos out for, like, 2 years, and, like, I just never mention it, so.
Should I just, like, randomly say the word like they do in the Super Troopers movie where they throw in meow?
We'll just do
everywhere,
subliminal messaging. I think that's the best way to do it.
Become one yourself, do that now!
I like the way he says it.
In the meantime, here are 10, yes, 10 ways that British and American people use numbers very differently. Now, before I hit record on today's video, I did a little bit of a tally as to how many places I've lived in either country. During the 26 years that I lived in Britain, I lived at precisely 5 addresses, compared to 9 during the 16 years that I've lived in America. And during that time, one major pattern has stood out to me. American addresses definitely have longer house numbers, but British addresses have longer postcodes. So it all evens out. In fact, let me give you some examples of what I mean. From memory, every single address that I had in Britain comprised of 2 digits. And pound for pound, the experience of most British people is that their house address won't ever exceed 3 digits. There are occasional exceptions to that, but in America, those exceptions seem to, in fact, be the rule. Because at virtually all of the places that I've lived in the US, the house or the apartment number has been in the thousands. And also, at some of these addresses, the American street name itself might contain a number, like 321st Avenue. They don't usually go that high. But 2nd Street. In Britain, a street that's also a number is very uncommon to the extent that I'm not sure they even exist. However, as I said, Britain has America beat when it comes to the size of our postcodes. And if for whatever reason you're confused by the term postcode, it is simply what Americans know as a zip code. You see, in Britain, a postcode can range from 6 to 8 characters, where in the US it's just 5. However, notice there that I said characters and not numbers. Well, since this video is all about numbers, there is something to keep in mind here. British postcodes are a combination of letters and numbers, meaning that American zip codes probably have more numbers, but that's whatever. The first letters in a UK postcode denote the postal region. So for example, where I grew up in Grimsby, that was part of the Doncaster postal code for some reason. So the first 2 letters are DN. And then you have a series of numbers and letters that denote a more precise location. And that's it. In America, it's just numbers, so that's easy. And basically, the first couple of digits are arranged by state. So here in the state of Illinois, those first 2 digits range from 60 to 62. Of course, when it comes to the size of your house number, there's one group of people who don't give a flying herd of badgers, and that's data brokers. Instead, they're so preoccupied with making bank from selling your address to people search sites. After buying my first American house, I started showing up on hundreds of them. How do I know? Because each instance was identified by today's sponsor. Incogni.
Okay, before we get into the sponsor, I was going to say, I mean, everything he said so far is true. A lot of the houses that I've grown up in had a 4-digit like address.
Yep, definitely. It's only been 3 and over. Like, we've lived in places that have 3.
It's 3 currently.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of the places we lived are 4.
Yep.
And I don't understand that either, especially if like the most you can get in Britain is 3.
Yeah.
most being 2. Like, how do you manage that, man?
All of that with like data, I give props to whoever created this map of data on how to tell which region is which region, because you have those postal codes and the zip codes to differentiate where this mail is going, where this thing is going. Like, it's so much. Like, props to whoever created it and came up with it.
I mean, there's so many of similar named roads here. Yep. I saw this one thing where they just gave up and it was like some road, other road. The road, and it was like this little subdivision with the most generic names for roads I've ever seen. I was like, are you kidding me?
We have the same name. It'll be like Sumner, but it'll be Sumner Court, Sumner Circle. So they've used it so many times.
And there's multiple Sumner Drives out there. So to me, it feels like if this Sumner Drive goes from 1 to 100, and then on the other side of town or in another city in the same state, they've also got a Sumner Drive. They start from 200 and go to 300, and that's what I've always assumed.
Yeah.
So if I see a new neighborhood, you see this a lot, and he showed it in the video. It was a new subdivision.
Yeah.
And it's already in the thousands. So to me, that just like mostly the newer houses are the ones that are in the thousands. So to me, it's just like, oh, you're reusing a road name that's been reused over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So our neighborhood, it's like all of the road names are all the constellations and the stars and old like Greek god names and things like that. And I've seen that in other subdivisions as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. That's my best guess, is that they just reuse the same road name and they have to keep going higher and higher number because they can't have you can't have more than one 300 Sumner Drive.
Because that'd be very confusing, chaotic.
But then again, it's in different cities.
Yeah.
It's in different cities, so I mean, I don't know. You have a different postal code at that point. But
then it wouldn't matter, yeah.
Cogni is a personal data removal tool that not only gets in touch with those data brokers, but requests that they take down your data. And it works too. Incogni very quickly worked its magic and I was removed from all of the sites in question. And for a YouTube sensation like me, or for people with real jobs, nobody has time to manually submit removal requests alone. In fact, who knows, maybe data brokers rely on this to break your spirit. The point is, Incogni raises mine. If your personal details are showing up on people search websites, Incogni will help you remove them. In fact, they're giving my subscribers 60% off their annual plan. Head to incogni.com/lostinthepond to get your discount and to thereafter protect your data. The link is in my description below. One other series of digits over which Britain has America beat is phone numbers, actually. Typically speaking, if we're not calling from overseas, in which we would need to use a country code, then a UK phone number usually consists of 11 digits. US phone numbers, meanwhile, consist of 10, basically 2 zip codes put together. The major difference here comes in the area code. For the first 20 years of my life, growing up in Grimsby, my area code was 01472, 5 digits. But it's worth keeping in mind that that only applies to landline phones. In the last 25 years, of course, we've seen the rise of the mobile phone and/or calculator. In Britain, unlike with landline phones, these are not assigned an area code. In fact, I think most, if not all, mobile phones in the UK begin with the digits 07. Incidentally, those are 2 digits that are going to be very important later on in this video, so keep watching. In America, I was surprised to find that this was quite different, because your mobile, or cell phone as it's usually known in the US, will usually carry the same area code as your landline phone if you still have a landline phone. So for example, the first place that I lived was Anderson, Indiana, and that city is in a region of Indiana that carries the area code 765. So all of the landlines there begin 765, and if you purchase your cell phone there, most likely that too will have the same area code. And most states, like Indiana and my current state of Illinois, are home to multiple area codes, which is why it was surprising to discover there are in fact 12 states, including the behemoth that is Alaska, that have just one. And that's because said states have more cows than people, probably.
Right? I mean, even in our city, 904 is the area code. And it's like everybody here, it's like a representation of where you're at.
Yeah.
If you hear, I mean, Ludacris even made a song about it, you know? All the area codes. As soon as you say 305, that's Miami.
Yep.
904 is Jacksonville.
Yep.
We just got a notice not too long ago that Jacksonville is going to add another zip code, because Jacksonville is like one of the biggest cities, not like city as far, just like landmass. It's a gigantic sprawling city. Like, you'll go so far and you're still in Jacksonville for some reason. I don't know. They need to split it up into multiple cities at this point. But yeah, I guess there's too many people in Jacksonville to where we're adding another zip code just for our one city.
Wow.
Yeah.
Earlier on, when I said this, just to stick it to my Year 10 maths teacher who told me that I'd never have such luxury, it did occur to me that my thousands of American viewers might have been thinking, what's Year 10? Was Lawrence born in the 1st century? No. A year in this instance is the equivalent of what Americans would call a grade at school. And it just happens that this particular example is a year populated by 14 to 15-year-olds. And you might be thinking, ooh, Lawrence, that's not 10, that's grade 9. Well, actually, it's both, You see, from between the ages of 5 to 6, British children begin what is known as Year 1. But as I discovered while watching the documentary The Kindergarten Cop, Americans don't call that the first grade.
The documentary? The Kindergarten Cop? No way. Are you kidding me? That's a great Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
It is.
Discovered while watching the documentary The Kindergarten Cop, Americans don't call that the first grade, they call it kindergarten. And so their numbering system is always one behind us. Oh, and speaking of years, that brings us on to this. I think at this point, most of us are probably...
Do you want to go back to that chart and have a look?
Because, yeah, when I hear him say year 10, I'm thinking sophomore because I'm thinking 10th grade. But we're one behind them. So when they say year 10, they mean the 9th grade. Okay. So I just have to remember that if I'm ever having a conversation with somebody and they say year 1, that wouldn't be 1st grade.
So they've got nursery, reception, year 1. We've got preschool, kindergarten.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And then you got the freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and then theirs is much easier.
Yeah. So they go all the way to year 13. So they'll have 13. Okay.
Kindergarten. And so their numbering system is always one behind us. Oh, and speaking of years, that brings us on to this. I think at this point, most of us are probably aware that Britain and America can't agree on how to write the date. Obviously, in Britain, it's day first, month second, and year last. As evidenced by our famous Guy Fawkes slogan, remember, remember, the 5th of November. Whereas in America, of course, it's flipped, as evidenced by July the 4th. Americans usually say the 4th of July. I don't know why they do that, but for everything else, it's the month first and the day second. Why do they do that? Well, you'll just have to watch my YouTube short all about it.
I mean, to be fair, I have seen so many different people put the date down differently. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's one universal. It's definitely a majority of people will do it like that, but I have seen so many people write it differently.
I have seen people do the date first and then the month. So I have seen people write it like that. And then on papers that are printed out, they have it like that too. But that's very few and far between.
I've seen it all three ways. The month first, the day first, or the year first. And I'm like, what is going on?
The year first.
Can we just decide on one and stick with it, please?
Yeah. It's very confusing, especially with doing the month and the day, because it can be exceptions because there's only up to 31 days in the month. So
it's like, that's why I'm like, what are you doing here?
Only go up to the number 12 for the months, but still, like,
I've seen it on job applications be different from the next job application. I'm like, why is this like this?
It's very confusing.
Just stick with one, please.
One of my longtime patrons, Jeff, asked me on this week's secret live stream. In the US, most people have memorized their phone numbers and social security numbers. What personal numbers are people expected to know in Britain? And phone numbers used to be one of those until we didn't need to anymore. But our equivalent of America's social security number is our national insurance number, or as it's known intimately to me, NIN. Nobody calls it that, really. So, what are the major numerical differences between an SSN and a NIN? Well, for once, it isn't the number of
the voice that he keeps going into is so funny, man. It's like his accent is there, but he just goes deeper into this other, like, goofy accent.
Major numerical differences between an SSN and a NIN. Well, for once, it isn't the number of characters, because an SSN has 9 and a NIN has 9. Try saying that after 7 white Russians. But the difference here is similar to zip codes versus postcodes. A NIN is comprised of 2 letters, followed by 6 numbers, and another letter for good measure. In the US, it's all numbers. America doesn't like letters. The first set of 3 digits is the area number. The second set of 2 digits is the group number, and then the final set of 4 digits is the serial number. We all care about that, obviously. The point is, I have both a NIN and an SSN, so I'm special.
Okay.
Time.
She has my phone number and social security number memorized.
I do.
And I almost have your social security number memorized.
But you
I
don't have
asked
to fill
for it
out
the
as
other
much
day.
paperwork as I do.
You said it, and I was like, oh, I knew that. But yeah, I've had that memorized. My mother-in-law doesn't program any of her friends, families' phone numbers in with the name. Just to keep her memory sharp, she says. She wants to keep everybody not stored, so she continues to remember everybody's phone number and keep her brain working.
Because if I were to ever lose my phone, I do know your number, but I don't know the boys' numbers by heart. I don't know my parents' numbers by heart, like all the way where I'd be 100% positive.
And before the rise of the cell phone, I knew everybody's cell phone, everybody's phone number. All of my friends, I knew their phone number by heart. When I first met you, we were just, I knew your phone number by heart.
Yeah.
And now, I know like 3 people's.
Yeah.
Our sons have had cell phones for the last 2 years now.
Yeah.
I don't know their numbers.
Yeah. I don't think they can tell me my number, to be honest with you. So that's something that we should work on, is they should memorize the numbers.
I don't know my own children's cell phone number. Do you?
No, I don't. I don't.
Dude, that's so
I know
bad.
it starts with 904.
Oh, gosh, dang.
Is it real? Oh, that's a different video. Well, sometimes to people like me.
Hold up. I gotta
see. The
back.
point is, I have both a NIN and an SSN, so I'm special. Time. Is it real? Oh, that's a different video. Well, sometimes to people like me who've lived on 3 different time zones, time can feel like it's ahead of its time. So I don't want to get bogged down in that, because there are other differences to talk about, namely how we tell the time. For instance, in Britain, if the time is 9:15, we might well say it's 9:15. In America, you often hear a 9:15, and similarly, Brits might refer to 9:30 as 9:30, whereas Americans might say 9:30. But the biggest difference between British and American digital clocks can be seen once we get to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. At that point, in America, clocks will simply say 1 o'clock. But not in Britain, where it suddenly goes from 12:59 to 13 o'clock. And that's because British clocks are on military time. And when I lived in Britain, I never knew this as military time. In fact, it was Americans that alerted me to this term. I just thought of it as time, like the whole world does this. And now that I know that it is military time, I'm confused that America doesn't do it, because they have the biggest military in the world. And then I found that the US military does do it, but the general public doesn't. Either way, to this very day, I instinctively know that 7 p.m. in the evening, that last word was redundant, is equal to 19 o'clock. I should point out that British people don't go around saying 19 o'clock. In conversation, we would say 7, which makes it even weirder, I suppose, that our clocks don't do that.
Wait, so what?
That is weird. They still say it as 7 p.m., but it's not on their clocks as that.
I do wish that we grew up learning it at least both ways, to where you could quickly, because even now at 36 years old, if you told me 1900, I would have to be like,
I
okay,
would have
so
to
13,
count it up.
14, 15.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not like programmed into me, because they don't even mention it in school. They might mention it, but they don't teach you it.
Yeah, no.
And so I feel like it should be taught, just so it comes more natural when you are interacting with other people around the world. You could just quickly be on the same page.
Yep.
Like, they just expect you to only stay inside your bubble. You're never going to interact with anybody else outside of the U.S., which,
But you should know all those different things. Like, just at least learn a little bit of it.
And they teach it to you as military time. And like he said, I just knew it as time.
Yeah. It's just like a normal thing to me.
It's really weird.
Say 7, which makes it even weirder, I suppose, that our clocks don't do that. But anyway, a moment ago when I was talking about quarters, there was one thing...
Hold on. He looked like I don't know. He looked like he went through some stuff between takes right here. He had a stressful phone call or something, dude.
Do that. But anyway, a moment ago when I was talking about quarters, there was one thing that I forgot to mention, because it wasn't quite relevant yet, and that's how the two countries refer to a quarter, as in the fraction. Because I've noticed that Americans, like my wife for example, use the words quarter and 1/4 interchangeably. But having grown up in Britain, 1/4 always sounds weird to me, because then we would only say quarter in that context. But I'm afraid that I'm going to have to interrupt myself there with a couple of caveats. The first of those is we don't have special words for other fractions, except for half. But then again, if you were to say 1/2, you could get confused with the time. And the other thing that might explain why Americans often plump for 1/4 is that a quarter is already part of the national dialogue, because that's the name of an American coin of the same name. Did you edit this?
Oh my God.
And I want to finish this video.
I mean, just this morning I was measuring out some milk for the oatmeal I was making for you guys, and it was 1/4 of a cup. So it's like 1/4 of a cup, 1/4 of a cup. It's interchangeable. But yeah, I would just, when I'm thinking about like liquid measurements especially, I'm going to use 1/3, 1/4.
Yeah, I won't say
half.
quarter, yeah.
I wouldn't say.
But I do change that though, because if it's like 1 1/4, I won't say 1 1/4. I'll say 1 1/4. I don't know why, but I just say.
You're just wrong for that. Okay, you're just wrong. I'm
like
just
I'm
kidding.
saying something.
It's
out loud.
interchangeable to me.
Yeah,
I mean, I would still. I don't know. It's weird. It is weird. The more he goes into these, I'm like,
things
why?
that you don't think about. Yeah.
Yeah. Why do we do this stuff? It makes it so hard to teach. It feels like.
Yeah.
Have the same name. Did you edit this?
I just love it.
And I want to finish this video by
humor.
talking about 3 numbers in particular, the first of which is 0. Is 0 a number? I'm no mathematician. And 0 is an interesting one to me because both countries have synonyms of the word 0 that the other country doesn't have. In America, somebody might say, I got zilch, as in, I've got nothing. Whereas Britain's alternatives for this nice round number are often context dependent. Firstly, you've got nil, which you often find in sport, as in, Grimsby Town Football Club won the FA Cup final 6-0, whereas American commentators are more likely to say 6-0 or 6-zilch. And then there's the word naught, which from memory is what I called 0 when I was a little kid. But it's also used in the title of a game that Americans call tic-tac-toe, a game that we call noughts and crosses. And remember earlier when I said this? My area code was 01472. This use of O to denote 0 in phone numbers is not something you often hear in America, where the preferred option would be 01472. And then
I do know about the nil. Maybe it's
Yeah.
because my friend in Liverpool, he talks and I've picked up some of the lingo. But yeah, I knew about nil.
I did know about nil, yeah. I've never heard anybody well, no, I've heard people say zilch, but not like in a normal like setting. Like, I don't know, I don't hear that word a lot.
I like noughts and crosses better.
Yeah, I
than
never even knew
tic-tac-toe.
that was named noughts and crosses.
Oh, that's what I'm calling it from now
crosses.
on. Want
Yeah.
to play some noughts and crosses after
Yeah, I'm
this?
gonna say that. I'm not gonna say tic-tac-toe anymore.
Then there were 7, or 2 actually, but 7 is one of them. Here in the United States, the number 7 is almost always written with 1 horizontal stroke and 1 diagonal stroke. But as many observant Americans have often pointed out to me, this is not always the case in Britain, where to that we like to add another horizontal stroke through the middle. And you might be thinking, why do you do that? And the answer is simple: to avoid confusion with the number 1. And to all of the Americans laughing at this idea, 7-Eleven agrees with me. I've just realized that's probably not an argument in my favor.
I agree
finally,
with him.
how do
I
you
used to write my 7s like that all the time in school. I don't do it anymore,
Yeah.
but I'm very familiar with writing the line through your 7. But yeah, it makes sense to me because it differentiates, because especially if you write your number 1 with that line across or line on top or whatever, it gets very confusing.
Yeah, I have bad handwriting, and there's a lot of things that I could use a line in to kind of differentiate.
Yeah.
I need to add a line to a few things, letters and numbers, because my mom used to get on to me, my teachers used to get on to me, like, what is this even? Oh my
What
gosh.
letter is this? What number
Can't
is
even.
this?
I've corrected you enough. It's up to you now. It never worked.
Probably not an argument in my favor. And
Billion.
finally, how do you define 1 billion? Well, most people today
Dude, that was a Dr. Evil reference.
That was $1 billion.
$1 million.
And finally, how do you define 1 billion? Well, most people today who have a grasp of big numbers would tell you 1,000 million. But try telling that to British people from before the 70s. And that's because before 1974, British people, as well as a host of other countries, defined a billion as 1 million million, otherwise known as a long billion, or more commonly, a trillion. And you might be thinking, what did those British people call 1,000 million? And the answer is simple: 1,000 million. However, all of this ceased to be the case when we followed the American example, a decision that was taken by 69th UK Prime Minister Harold Wilson, not to be confused with 67th UK Prime Minister Harold Wilson. That said, most European countries actually still operate under the long billion, which makes you wonder, is Luxembourg the richest country just because it keeps adding on 3 zeros? I've no idea. Well,
I've gotten that in our comments a few times recently, that Luxembourg is the richest country in the world. I'm like, I had no context around it, though.
Yeah, I
so
don't know.
I'm going to have to look more up into this now. What the heck?
keeps adding on 3 zeros. I've no idea.
I have no idea.
This is supposed to be an informative video, and he's so funny, I just keep laughing.
It's very entertaining, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, if I've learned anything today, it's that both countries have a very different set of numbers and occasionally letters. And for somebody who's already not very good at maths, this video has really made me miss my word videos. Anyway, thank you to my ponderers with whom I recently discussed this topic on our secret live streams. If you would like to become a ponderer of Lost in the Pond, you can do so today at patreon.com/lostinthepond or by clicking the join button below. Until the next video, goodbye.
I love him.
So good. So
he's
good.
so funny, and he's so like entertaining, and he's very informative as well. But he's so, I love when people keep you entertained with, like, keep you attached to what they're saying. Like
it helps me stay engaged.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
If every teacher you had growing up was like that,
you learn so much.
you would have retained a lot more of the knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay?
And you would look forward to going to their class.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a great channel.
Yeah.
Definitely go and show some love in the description. Those links, click them, subscribe. We're definitely going to be subscribing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, if there's any other videos from that man, definitely leave them down below.
Yes.
And we'll definitely react to those because that was quite enjoyable.
It was, definitely.
I like his just change up tonally.
Yeah.
Did
you just create a word?
Tonally?
Tonally?
Tonally. Not tonally.
Tonally.
Not like buff, like toned up. Okay.
Yeah. But in his
tonally.
Tone. Okay.
It's a word.
I get what you're saying.
It's a word, Jess.
I get it.
All right. Anyways. Trying to come at me over my vocabulary. This is a video on numbers.
Oh, okay,
not
you're right.
It had some letters in it, though.
It did.
Anyways, tell her.
And the nin.
Tell her what tonally means, okay? Anyways, I'm sorry. We're just joking. All right, y'all. Thanks for joining us on this video. We are informed now. Now I know all of the differences and how we use numbers here in America compared to in Britain.
I do know the difference, but I'm still confused by it. Because if I were to go to Britain and try to start all the way over and like relearn all that stuff, it would take me a while. I'm not saying I wouldn't get it, but it definitely is different. So I wouldn't be used to it at all. And I'd be like, you have numbers? And then there's
I'd help you.
11?
I'd help you out. I'd be there for moral support. It would take me like a week and I'd get it. Because I don't know, a lot of this stuff just makes more sense to me. Right off the bat, it just is easier to comprehend. It is different, so it's a little bit of, change up. But I think it's just easier right off the bat. It's just like it makes more sense.
Yeah.
Quicker. I don't know. I feel like it'd be easier to teach this to a new young child. You know what I mean?
Than our way.
Yeah. Anyways, except the 100 million billion.
Yeah, that was confusing.
Like, wait,
that
what?
went just right over my head. I'm like, people are calling it different things. I didn't know that, but that's not something that I want to add to my vocabulary. I've got billion. That's it. That's all I need to know. It's fine. Yeah. That's it.
Jess is stuck in her ways. You could tell right there with that. Doesn't want to come off the billion.
I've drawn my feet. Okay.
All right, y'all. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye, friends.
Peace.
I'm not scared of your love, so show me